I'll just try and yeah, I need the email address.
Oops. Okay. Welcome everyone to this, the 9th Regional Disabled People's User-Led Organisation event as part of the Strengthening DPULOs programme. This is in fact the last regional event, but by far the best, obviously. This is the best region. And yes, we knew that was true. And over the 9 events, it will mean that over 200 disabled people's user-led organisations will have participated in one of these events. So that's absolutely great. Part of the reason we are the last event is because of the need to reorganise the event, which was going to be held in February. For understandable reasons associated with travel disruption and so on, it was postponed to this date. And just big thanks to all my team who actually got that sorted and turned around within a very short period. And this is the only event of the 9 which is being live streamed, and that's why there are cameras at the back, so that people can watch this event live on the internet. And that's really important because of the difficulties of distance for some of our organisations being able to be here today. If we hinged this region around Tewkesbury, why not, you would end up with Cornwall being in Scotland. It is by far the longest English region and therefore has particular issues about geography and rurality, and I'm sure that will come out during the day. My name is Andy Rickell, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Action on Disability and Work UK, and I will be your chair for much of the day. Action on Disability and Work UK is, like yourselves, a disabled people's user-led organisation, a national one but based here in the region, and we're very keen to work with other DPULOs across the region and elsewhere in building our effectiveness. We used to be called, until last year, the Vassall Centre Trust, and that gives you a bit of a clue as to what we used to do. We used to own and run this centre, and that's one of the reasons why we would hope it is particularly accessible and the reason why this event is here today. And it has a number of accessibility features that you often don't find in other venues, and that's why we are here. I'm now going to explain some housekeeping. This turns out to be quite a long list of housekeeping. First of all, please can you switch your mobiles either to off, preferably, or silent, otherwise. There will be a few people who will have their mobiles on, they will go during the day, and that's because they're part of the communication process for people who are outside trying to stream in, trying to contact the organisation by tweet and by text. Okay. Toilets are out of this door, back to the main corridor. There are 3 accessible toilets immediately to your left outside. There are inaccessible toilets, those who need them, on the other way. And if the 3 accessible cubicles are all full, do please either go either way down the corridor. It is a bit of a walk, but either way down the corridor, and there are further sets of accessible cubicles further down the corridor. One thing we did ensure was that there were plenty of toilets. It does mean that disabled people are able to participate in events because there's plenty of loops and you aren't all queuing up during the interval. There will be no fire drill today. If the fire alarm does go off, which will be an audible and visual signal, it means it's a real one, and we will need to evacuate the building. In terms of fire exits, the most obvious one is the one immediately to my right here in the room, and people are expected to go through the door and to re-congregate on outside the gate. So not inside the premises, but outside the gate. That just allows the fire engines and so on to get in. There are other ways out. If for whatever reason that area is blocked, then we go back out through the main exit the way you came in. And if that way is blocked, you would go out to the corridor and then left down to the end where there is another exit. Okay. Paperwork. Hopefully everyone has got their paperwork, and I've just been asked to mention to make certain you have it all, but you should have a delegate pack, an evaluation form, and travel expense claim form, a list of all the delegates here today, all the participants here today, a hard copy of the slides in small size, and a photograph consent form, and a cuddly toy. No, I was wrong about the cuddly toy, but you should have all the others, and if for whatever reason you don't have any of those, please have a chat with the people at reception. There will be some spare ones, I'm absolutely sure. Should you need any assistance or help during the day, there are several colleagues around. Though interestingly, the one colleague I wanted to point out is not actually here. Claire, who you may have spotted, can't see Claire in the room at the moment, who will assist you with anything you require, or me, and I'll make certain I get hold of someone that can help you. So don't suffer in silence. Do please raise any issues you have. In terms of travel expenses, we're hoping to try and help anyone that's trying to fill their claim form in and get their money and all the rest of that in room 1 at lunchtime. Room 1 is going out this door here, and it's the second room on the left, the room after the room with the stalls in. And particularly over lunchtime, your claims will be dealt with. If you don't get a chance to deal with them at lunchtime, then after the event is finished, there'll be another opportunity there. But actually, if you can do it at lunchtime, that's good. It means you don't get home late or anything like that. We try to put you into specific groups. There should be a symbol on your badge which indicates the group you're in. That was an attempt to try and even everyone out, so there's a reasonable number of different types of people on each table, and therefore hopefully that helps the conversation when it happens. If there is a group which is really finding it difficult in here because it's really noisy, there will be opportunities to move two groups out into the two adjacent rooms. So do please raise that if that is really presenting a problem for your group. As I mentioned, there are cameras around the room. There are photos being taken by several organisations today. If you have a problem with your about being in a photograph, could you please indicate now? Right, I'm not seeing anyone indicating, but clearly if that was the case, then we'd make certain that your picture wasn't taken.
We want to tweet the live link to the live stream. What information can we give out?
Someone who knows more about this than I do, which will pretty much be everybody, someone will come over to you and talk about that. Jeff, that might be you. Okay, great. So if you could explain to him what to do, that'd be absolutely brilliant. Okay, there will also be live. There are 2 lots of people videoing today's conference. We have somebody taking the live streaming. They're behind you to your left, and in the middle of the room we have someone taking an actual video with the intention of creating an edited version, hopefully for use by several organisations subsequently. Again, if you've got any problems with that, please indicate, and probably under those circumstances you just need to make certain that you're away from where the line of the video, because realistically it's being videoed for everybody else. Okay. A word to live streamers, if we have people on the live streaming, hopefully there will be, on that same page that you should be watching the live streaming, it also refers to the text number and the Twitter identity if you want to tweet or text in. Should you do so with a question, that question will be magically brought to me, and we'll make sure that at some point, an appropriate point in the proceedings, your question is raised. That's really important. Okay, moving on now to the day. It is great to see so many disabled people's user-led organisations together. There's no question that we are stronger together and we can learn off one another and support one another. It's great that today's event is being paid for by somebody else. And the event is being paid for by the Office for Disability Issues, the Strengthening DPULOs programme. It does mean that not everything will necessarily is appropriate to raise today. Clearly there are some very definite things on the agenda, and those are the things we're going to concentrate on. We know that when DPULOs get together, there are lots of other things we might like to say, particularly in the presence of people representing government, but that's not necessarily the purpose of today. However, I will commit, and no doubt we will discuss this in the fourth session where we think about the ways forward, that one way or the other there will be a further opportunity, a further chance for us to get together to talk about all those things we really, really want to talk about. So hold that thought, and there will be an opportunity on that occasion. Right, and now I move on to the PowerPoint, and it's going to appear for you. Great. So today, there are a couple of aims of today. Never quite sure what the difference is between the name and an objective. It's never been really explained to me. But there are two aims of today. The first is that DPULOs start to build on and develop regional partnerships to enable stronger outcomes for disabled people. The chance for us to get together and to talk about how we might work together in the future. That's what it means. And the second, that DPULOs have a shared understanding of how to demonstrate to commissioners the added value DPULOs can bring to public service delivery. And that's really important in a world where increasingly the opportunity to acquire funding is about delivering public services. So there's something there about helping people to understand how that happens and how we can be better placed to actually take advantage of that funding opportunity. And then we have some objectives. Hurrah, let's write it down. Cool. Okay. 4 objectives: to facilitate networking opportunities for DPULOs to meet and build partnerships and links with each other. So I hope by the end of the day you've all shared one another's contact details. To share skills and best practice to support delivery of stronger outcomes for disabled people. We're not here just because we feel like having a day out. We're here because we really care about what happens to disabled people and their equality. Thirdly, to develop closer working between DPULOs and DPULO networks in the region, and in the fourth session we'll get the chance to talk more about that, and in the third session hear a bit more about that, how that happens elsewhere in the country. And fourthly, to increase understanding of commissioning and build capacity, to learn how to win the funding and deliver services that we want to deliver to disabled people. Great. Oh, and I think there's a fifth one as well. Oh, yes, there it is. I was just it's going to fall off the end of the page. To increase understanding of the Disability Action Alliance, and I'm sure at some point during the day someone will mention what that is. Important to note, round the room there are a number of stalls, and in rooms 2 and 3 as well. Do please take the opportunity during the breaks and at lunchtime to go around those, pick up all the freebies, leaflets and so on, and take the opportunity to learn more about what those things are. I note in particular we have someone from the Disability and Health Employment Strategy, the discussions so far. Hello, thank you for indicating there. That's the government's draft strategy for disability employment. Very, very important, because they're thinking about how they're going to deliver that. Now is the time. If you've got a view about how the government should be supporting disabled people and their work opportunities, do please go to that stall and make your views very clear. Okay, that's the end of my introduction. It does seem like a very long introduction. It seems a long time ago I started. But now the opportunity to move into the sessions proper. And the first session on why DPULOs are better and how we can prove it is going to be led by Rachael Wallach, who I'm sure will introduce herself. There we go, Rachael. Okay.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me? All right. I'm going to assume that's a yes because no one shouted, or I'm completely silent. Okay, so I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Rachael Wallach, and I'm the Joint National Lead of the Strengthening Disabled People's User-Led Organisations programme. And for the rest of today, I'm going to refer to Disabled People's User-Led Organisations as DPULOs, because the full name is a bit of a tongue twister, and quite frankly, I don't think I'll manage to get it out right every single time otherwise. So that's what I mean when I say DPULOs. The Strengthening DPULOs programme is run from the Office for Disability Issues, and we provide a range of financial and practical support to DPULOs to help them to become stronger and more sustainable. These regional events are part of this programme. if you want to find out more, or if you haven't heard about us, we have a number of ambassadors here. Taiba Yassin, if she just puts her hands up, Taiba's here now, and I'm sure would be very happy to explain a bit more about the programme during lunch or during one of our comfort breaks. Equally, if you have any questions, please ask me. And later today, Tess McManus, another one of our ambassadors, is going to come. And again, please do feel free to ask her any questions or talk to her about the programme. So that's really a bit about us, why I'm here, and my role. I wanted to start off this session by reflecting on something which I think is really important. I want you to think of the organisation that you're here today to represent, and just consider the number of members or customers that you have. And then I want you to think about the number of people all sat here today and the number of different DPULOs represented, and think about the total number of disabled people through being customers or through being members of all of our organisations that are represented here today. And I think that's a really important point, because what business, what social enterprise, or what charity has the breadth and range of lived experience of disabled people that we in the DPULO sector do? And what other organisations that work with disabled people have the mandate to speak on behalf of disabled people, or to understand their customer base that we as the DPULO sector do? And I think that's an incredible strength, an incredible asset, and something that we perhaps take for granted. But I think it's really important to keep that at the forefront of our minds. So this session is on why DPULOs are better and how we can prove it. The reasons I've just mentioned perhaps the one reason why we're better. But the context for this session is really about tough times. These are tough times. We're seeing significant increases in need. We're seeing less money available to meet those needs. We're seeing more competition to deliver services, to deliver public services. And we're also seeing commissioning trends that sometimes can make it harder for DPULOs and other small organisations to compete for funding or for contracts. In these times, being able to demonstrate the value that DPULOs bring, the added value that we bring to our work, is absolutely essential for our survival. And so that's really the context of this first session. It's where does that value come from, and why is it that we're better? In my role as Joint National Lead, I spend a lot of my time meeting people from other sectors. So they might be commissioners, they might be social workers, they might be the police, they might be policymakers, a really wide range of different areas. And often they haven't heard of DPULOs, they don't know what a DPULO is. And so I explain, it's led and controlled by disabled people, commitment to social model of disability, all the rest. But then they say, well, why are they better? Why does it make them better? I have some ideas of why it makes them better. I think everyone in this room, I hope everyone in this room thinks they are better and has some ideas about why they are. But actually communicating that and proving it is really difficult. So we're going to start off today with what I think is probably the most difficult part of the day, so I'll apologise in advance for that. It's an interactive session. I'm not sure whether you have scenarios on your table. I think they might be up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to hand round a scenario to each table. The scenarios, there are 3 different scenarios, so you won't all get the same scenario. But all the scenarios have a common theme, and the theme is this. You find yourself stuck in a lift with either the leader of the council or head of adult social care or the chair of your clinical commissioning group. And what you know is that they potentially have money available to fund you or your organisation. You've only got 2 minutes because you're in a lift with them. You have to come up on your tables with what it is that you would say to them. I'm going to be really cruel. I'm only going to give you 20 minutes to come up with it, because you're not going to be in the lift with them for more than 2 minutes. And after that 20 minutes, I'm going to ask each table to feed back, pretend that either Andy or I are the chair, the leader of the council, or head of adult social care, and pretend that we're in an elevator and say what you have to say. So I hope that's clear. And yeah, for now, I'm going to hand over to you. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Right.
I'm just going to let you know that some flip chart paper and pens are going to be handed round, because it would be really helpful if you can write down the pitch that you come up with, so that you've got that to refer to when you're handing back, but also so that we have the opportunity to share it with other tables or with other DPULOs. It's a really full session.
Sorry?
It's a really full session, but people have come up with brilliant things. So we'll see.
Presumably we're not allowed to try and disable the lift.
Okay, I have. So the first time we run a session like this, of course, the first table put up their hand and said, well, we pressed the emergency stop button. Then the next table said, we're going to create a hostage situation. So yeah, I probably should have announced ground rules of no violence.
Well, I would imagine under those circumstances that would not help you build a relationship with that person.
Possibly, but you know, at the other events we've had commissioners attend.
Right.
And so they tend to speak after the session, and so far all the commissioners have said, okay, well, I've certainly taken one thing away from today, I won't be using the lift in the future.
Yeah.
So we may have put, yeah.
No, to actually be able to put together a message in 2 minutes, of only 2 minutes long, is really difficult.
There's one.
It takes longer to write a short message.
Yeah, much longer. There's one particular pitch that came out of the conference in the Northwest.
Right.
And we haven't yet collated all the data, but I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. I can't believe they came up with it in 2 minutes, but it's the kind of thing I kind of want to use as a strapline for the program.
Well, that can be shared, will it?
Yeah, so all of the, I mean, my understanding is that when the reports are being produced, those pictures on the flip chart paper will be written up. I'm not sure. I think we in ODI need to do a little bit of work in terms of feeding back, because I think all the host organisations are just putting together reports, but no one's going to be that interested in reading the report. So I think those bits of information are the key points we're going to pull out. And then
and it may have been just fortunate you actually had someone who that is their job.
Yeah.
They do write the bits of that organisation. And ideally that's what you want your bid writer to be able to do. That's correct. Partly because actually the 2 minute pitch is probably about the 400 words, that you get in the thing to explain who you are and why you're a good organisation to deliver the thing. Yeah.
It's a funny thing as well. When I was just commissioning services and I was doing this, I was an ambassador, so I was just doing it additionally to my job. I did a massive home care tender,
right?
And I was commissioning home care, and it got to tender point. We were tendering for a framework agreement, and one of the organisations that tendered was a DPULO.
Right.
And it was very interesting, both in their bid or their tender, but also in their interview, that they didn't ever explain that added value. And they did say some things, like they said self-directed support.
Yeah.
So there were keywords that I knew because of the, and it was fine. It was, I was responsible for the tender, so I was able to brief the panel or explain to the panel. But it really struck me that and I don't know if it was assumption, obviously because of the different roles and stuff, I wasn't able to have that conversation. I don't know whether it was that they had just assumed that people would understand the value or quite what. But it was really, I mean, they got through because they were brilliant anyway.
Right,
but,
Yes, I think that's right. In a sense, having those perceived USPs and USPs that perceived that by the commission is really important, that they come across in any marketing process. Because if you don't say it, you don't necessarily get the mark. So And also, I suppose, in a sense, we have lived in a world, probably into the last few years, when the funding of DPULOs, there was more associated with grant funding, and the organisation may have been the local democratic organisation, and therefore it morphed into delivering direct payments, etc. There wasn't the same sort of competition or level of competition that there now is. The sort of, well, where the DPULOs is direct payment support, why wouldn't you use it? Well, the answer is because Leonard Cheshire or Penrose Trust or whatever put in a bid which came out with a lower figure, and you've got to deal with that.
It's interesting.
And I don't know, and in a sense, often you see organisations which carry on, and actually you realise that what's happened is they're carrying on. At one point they were funded, they lost their funding, and they now carry on as a bit of a hulk, a husk. There's no funding. That's what happens.
It's difficult. I think though as well, I mean, people complain about it, which is understandable, but I also think it's unavoidable. I think the other difficulty is within local authorities, given the scale of the cuts to local authority budgets, of course you're seeing massive changes in staff, and you will. And I mean, on that tender evaluation panel, I had a nurse who also happens to be the foster parent of a disabled boy.
Right.
But she didn't know what. I mean, her son must be 5, maybe.
Right.
So young. But she didn't know what self-directed support meant. And I guess as a nurse, I mean, it's probably not that surprising. And her son's very, very young again, and perhaps not that surprising. And we also had a parent of from our local independent parent carers forum. So we had a parent rep on representing local disabled, whatever parent.
Right.
And that was interesting again. She didn't know what self-directed support was. And so, let alone sort of local authority staff, but if you explaining to one what that added value is, just isn't enough. Because the change of I think so.
Yes. So I mean, I think actually, in a sense, I suspect getting to hear that really good one from North West, and letters a better one here today. People would just say, actually, yes, that's captured it. In a sense, people would say, yes, I recognise all that, but their ability to wordsmith it, and then particularly the ability to deliver it in an interview or something like that, it's quite it's a professional delivery, very professional delivery. When actually, they're going to be a group of well-suited people from large organisations having produced massive, very well-written tenders. It's really.
Although it's interesting for home care, we received 42 tenders. So it was significant. And I would not say that the quality of the tenders reflected necessarily the size or budget of the organisation, which was very, very interesting. And to some extent, I don't know if it was an ad hoc thing, but to some extent some of the really big organisations, you could tell that people referenced, the beautiful with the photos, all the rest of it. But sometimes got let down by not answering the question in method statements, because what they were saying is how they deliver their services now.
Yes.
But they scored low because what they weren't explaining was how they would deliver the service that we specified. It's quite interesting. I don't know. It's interesting.
No, I mean we started down that line and taken on someone, business development manager, who's responsible now for delivering tenders. I think for submitting tenders, and I think literally the last couple of months we submitted our first ever tender at that time. And one of the issues when we were reviewing it was sort of saying, have we answered the question? Don't answer the question you wish they'd asked, answer the question they have asked. and try and work out what it is they're trying to get to. Yeah, and that's really it's like answering an exam, isn't it? You know, they might have asked you quite a difficult question. You need to answer that question, not the one.
Well, I say, I try when I try and explain it. I say it's like when you're applying for a job. You see the person spec and you see the job description, and you know that you maybe. It's not clear whether you actually meet those essential skills or not, but you do the work in your head to try and work out how it looks. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think it's that same process.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. It is, and you want to get a commissioner ideally to actually be aware of the way in which you might deliver it, so that they're not asking you to do something which actually is really going to be costly, because it's being asking an organisation to do it very different.
It's hard commissioning as well, though, because your sort of good practice will tell you that you want to give organisations as much creativity as possible to say how they'll deliver the service. But that becomes almost impossible to score. Well, it makes that, if you give total flexibility, if it's something like home care, it makes it incredibly difficult to score tenders or method statements where you compete, where you're contracting, and also and monitor it.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing as well, and this is public sector in general, it's very difficult. We're not in the public sector great at contract monitoring, and so and often you end up with variations, or we're not very good at specifying. So you often end up, unless you're specific enough, you'll end up having to issue a variation, which is very costly.
Right. Yes.
So I think as a reaction to that, Commission has become incredibly dictatorial when they're specifying services, which of course stifles the innovation. It's a really difficult. It's a really difficult balance.
No, absolutely. I don't know. I suppose, in a sense, what we really want commissioners to do is actually start the commissioning process earlier. No one was. The first process is literally go out there and sort chaps, think about doing, and I think increasingly they're doing that, aren't they? Going out there and sort of saying, well, we're going to have to commission this broad service, something anyway. Right, chaps. We want to listen to what your views are about how it might be done, both obviously from the potential users, but also from the potential deliverers.
Yeah.
So you don't end up then creating actually, death by commissioning. It ends up being very similar to the way it used to be, and no better.
I mean, I did that, and I think you're absolutely right. It's good practice. When it doesn't happen, it's probably a tight time scale.
Yeah, I don't.
I met, I can't remember his surname, but a guy called Mick, who's head of commissioning for Leeds City Council.
Right.
And they're doing some really interesting stuff around innovation.
Right.
So if you have a good idea, then you get £2,000. If you have a business plan for delivering that idea, you get £10,000.
Right.
But it's to deliver services on behalf of the community in a way that's self-sustaining or whatever.
Right.
And I feel that which I thought was very interesting, because I think that yes, I absolutely agree with everything you said about commissioning, but I really feel there's a role to support innovation as well, and I'm not sure that commissioners know how to.
Yeah. I mean, and I wonder, in a sense, at this stage, what we're encouraging people to do. Well, no, in a sense, it might be quite interesting in the next session how that is dealt with. But there's a role both in trying to complete the tender thing when it comes out at the end, and go through that process, but also further upstream. Is there a means by which you can go and have a chat with your commissioner and sort of say, well, at some point in the next few years, we know you're going to have to recommission this. Why not think about how they might?
So the next session is nothing to do with tender. It's all about that second point.
Right.
It's about how ambassadors have developed this workshop structure to facilitate effective meetings between commissioners and. We'll see.
I think that's right. I think then the contour of that will ultimately be a bit like what you said about happening at Leeds, that actually there's some recognition of the input that people make at that level, and if you can find a way that the commissioners are willing to put some small funding into that, it might be that actually, you know, a DPULO might never ultimately get to deliver the thing because actually the scale is just too big or something or whatever. But there's issues then about cutting the scale down so they can get the shot. So there's a whole range of that. But something around the, you know, if they offer particularly good add value in terms of being able to represent both the users, but also represent the users in the context of how the thing might be delivered. That'd be real, you know, that'd be real value.
I think that they would. I think that it's interesting that we'll pay providers for providing, but we never pay people for kind of their input into the commissioning process.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you know, consultations would be tokenistic gestures of travel expenses, whatever.
Right.
But what I'd love to do, and I really wanted to do, is to outsource the commissioning function to a DPULO. That would be my ultimate dream. Potentially a community challenge.
Yes. I think that's right. I think at one point I sort of said actually that the problem is that you create this centre in this commission, and actually really you need representatives of the users talking directly to representatives of the providers about how it might be done, and the commission then plays a sort of an enabling role and a sort of referee role.
But I think there's no reason why that commissioning role shouldn't be a DPULO.
Yeah, absolutely.
And outsource.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there ultimately will be some route back to political accountability.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Outsource everything else. And commissioning is outsourced in some councils, but not to...
Oh, is it? Right.
Anyway, okay, I'm going to warn people. Guys, I hate to tell you this, but you have 2 minutes left to come up with your pitches. Do we have a roving mic or someone that can operate it? Is there someone?
Someone who can be a Roomba.
Or if necessary, Steve from that table will be.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be willing to help. Yeah.
That's cool. The roving mic situation has been an issue so far in most of it.
They don't work.
Really, they haven't had them, and so Brian, who's going to speak later, has done an amazing job. I think must have had more, you know, huge amounts of exercise, basically running around the room, particularly during his. I don't know why it's happened, particularly during his sessions.
Right.
So he's speaking at the front and then running to someone with a mic.
PA systems can be a nightmare, particularly in the rent. You know, so it's not your PA system; it's a rented place. Okay. The number of times a PA system has failed, and you'll say, "Well, can everyone hear?" And you're thinking, "Well, actually, I can't." So yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, one of the values of being somewhere like here, we know the ins and outs. We know the person who necessarily can be brought in to make certain put right. And particularly given the short time scale, that's one of the reasons I thought we need to be in a location where we've got. It's not just about the room. It's not just about the loo. It's not just about the food. It's the PA system work. The other things work.
Okay, guys, I'm really sorry, but your time is now up. So the way this session is going to continue is that I'd like some volunteers, and what I'd like is for you to outline your scenario. So read out the scenario that your table has, and after that you can either choose me or Andy, but pretend we are either a commissioner or a leader of a council or whoever, and I'd like you to make our pitch to us. I'm going to be really cruel. I told you it was 2 minutes, so I'm going to time it on my iPad here, and I'm afraid after 2 minutes, that's it. It will be stopped. So Steve, can I ask, would you mind taking around the mic? And so, can we have a volunteer, please? Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our scenario is the lift cell. Scenario 1. You find yourself in an elevator with the chair of your local clinical commissioning group. You know they are about to go to tender for a personal health budget support service contract. You have 2 minutes to persuade them why they should issue the contract to a DPULO rather than a private company, a large non-user-led disability charity, a local voluntary sector organisation. What do you say to them? Give me the nod for the start.
Start.
We can deliver professional and efficient services. We know how and what disabled people think, and we live their lives because we are disabled people as well. I would use words like confidence, trust and commitment in us. We're value for money because we would include what's needed, not what non-disabled people think we need. And we are passionate about delivery, adding value in high quality services for service users. We're not subject, in terms of cost, we're not subject to shareholders wanting profits. Mostly we're not-for-profit companies. We can even save you money. If you want to know how, come and talk to us.
Amazing.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, you've just set a new time record. That came in at 43 seconds. You've made things harder for everyone else. Can we have another volunteer, please? Brilliant. Oh. Fabulous. So again, unless it's the same scenario, if you can explain your scenario and then let me know and I'll press start on the timer.
We had the same scenario in a lift with the chair of the local clinical commissioning group. We'd use the lift to open the conversation. We'd either say it's not accessible to disabled people if the buttons aren't visible or at the right height, or if it's a good lift, we would compliment them on having thought that through. We would say that DPULOs are a trusted source of information. We're the peer group of the users they want to reach, and people trust their peers. We're a good way to communicate with users. We're able to highlight the positives that the service are trying to achieve, not just give criticisms. Our users are better at thinking outside of the box and innovating, coming up with new approaches and pioneering new work. They've had to be through their lived experience. We have personal experience of the effect of lack of funding for users, and in the long term it can cost more financially through people needing to use more services. We can help them to gain the trust of people, and a user perspective is essential. Some national services have a very formulaic approach, and they need to use the DPULO experience to make it more person-centred.
Brilliant. That came in at 1 minute and 20 seconds. Again, excellent. I think it's really interesting that lived experience has come up in both of the pitches so far. Can I have another volunteer, please?
Hello. Our table had the scenario 3 for the lift cell, which is you find yourself in an elevator with the leader, mayor of the council. You have 2 minutes to persuade them why the council should provide core funding to a local DPULO in their area. What do you say to them? And our pitch is basically, we understand core funding is a lot harder to unlock than sort of project funding. So you're going to be interested in us for 2 reasons. 1, because we're better. 2, because we're cheaper. We're better because we're inclusive and we're accessible. We're credible because we're user-led and those users have lived experience. We are interested in user-focused rather than process-focused delivery. We're cheaper because we believe in peer support. We understand the pinch points and the efficiencies, where they can be made and where they can't be made, and our local organisation allows us to unlock and bring together the various supports that exist in the areas. We know our members, we know our users, we know our clients.
Brilliant. And again, there it's quite interesting, the points around accessibility and inclusivity. So can we have another volunteer, please? We already have another volunteer. Fantastic. Again, if you can outline the scenario before you start, that would be great.
Hiya, our scenario is scenario 3 as well, where we're stuck in the elevator with the mayor. So I'll just hand over to Mark.
I liked and introduce what DPULOs do, what makes you special and different people who use the service is lived experience disability people. We should be funded as we provide value for money. We know what people want by listening to users of our services. We prevent problems, isolation, and give people a voice. People members know who we are and where to come for advice. Being local, we know other parents, partners, or organisation, and work together. We would invite the mayor to visit and see our services. We are a large part of the people who vote for you, use us to have a voice in our community.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant, and two really interesting things there. I think one is the voice element of being a DPULO and the relevance of that to politicians, because obviously their constituents will also be disabled people. So absolutely brilliant. And again, the other thing that I think is really interesting that came up there, I'm going to paraphrase or use a slightly different word that you use, but the holistic approach, the fact that you work with and are able to signpost people to different partners, absolutely brilliant. So am I right in thinking that there's one more table to go? That's what I thought. Fantastic.
Our scenario is we're in a lift with a local authority commissioner, and they're about to tender for an information, advice and advocacy contract. I'm ready, apparently.
Right.
Good morning. I'm with Gold Star, which is a disabled people's user-led organisation. You don't know what one of those is? Our board and most of our staff are all disabled people, and we live in your local authority area, and we're really interested in about your advice and advocacy contract. Our members, our staff, our leaders are all been using the current one, and we've got some comments about it, but we'd like to be involved in running the next one for you. As disabled people, we've all been using the services, and with disabled people with different impairments, different life stories, different issues, we know that the advice and advocacy needs to look across all the different aspects of our life. We have people and networks through the disabled community, whether it's sensory or physical or mental health issues, and we bring all of those together in one place, and we discuss the issues. We're really interested in about employing disabled people, and if we had your contract, we would be employing disabled people to deliver your contract. So it's disabled people talking to disabled people with the understanding from our own lives. We know this is going to save you money because we, as disabled people, know how to save money because we don't get very much of it. So we know how to cut corners, and we know how to make things work with limited resources. We're also aware of some studies about the return, a social return of your money spent, well, of our local taxes spent in your community. And we know that you're going to get more money back by spending it with a local DPULO than you are with a national or regional body. I have no idea what I'm doing on time.
You 55 minutes, 1 minute 55 seconds. In fact, you're now 2.
I'm never
2 minutes. So brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And again, with that, I think it's really interesting the points you were making about peer support. which again hasn't come up perhaps so directly in other of the pitches, but I think is really important. Have we had any communications or any tweets from people who are attending via video link?
No, we have Steve Padgett from Disability Cornwall on the Skype.
Brilliant.
And I think for that, if you could all speak up, I think the microphone on the laptop isn't brilliant, so Steve is struggling to hear.
Okay, amazing. Does Steve have a pitch?
Nothing.
Okay,
No, that's
brilliant. Okay, so first of all, I want to congratulate everyone in this room or something. It's the fact, it's two things actually. One is that no one said they were going to press the disabled button on the lift, so no one stopped the lift. And two is there was no mention of violence or hostage situations. That's the first time that's happened in one of these events, so congratulations. Okay, so not in that case, no round of applause. Okay, so I'm going to move on to another slide. This slide has what we've put together as 7 USPs of a DPULO. It's a work in progress. When we started out, there were 5 of. They started running these events. There were 5 of them. We've added 2 more. Following the event we held yesterday, I think we're going to add another, an 8th, which is around problem solving. Today, I think maybe we want to be thinking again about a 9th, which is not for profit. If you have any comments or thoughts on these unique characteristics, then please discuss them. As I said, they're a work in progress. And what they've come from partly is the pictures and the cells that you've been delivering, and I think it's really interesting that every single one of those points, that these unique selling points, has been mentioned in one of those pitches. If I go through them and explain sort of roughly what they mean, that might be helpful. So in terms of expertise of lived experience, the point is that disabled people are running, delivering and managing and developing services, and that adds a level of knowledge and expertise to our work, because we've been there, we know what it's like, we know what the problems are, and we know what our service users are going through. And this often increases the sense of confidence and the ease that service users have. It makes a big difference when you tell your story or you explain your problem to another disabled person. And because of that, when it works, DPULOs can often feel safe, supportive and empowering places within the community. That moves quite well on really to peer support. And this is something that's really, I think, quite unique. I mean, DPULOs pioneered years ago this approach. And it is incredibly valuable. And it's the fact that DPULOs create real chances, both formally but also often informally, for disabled people to meet together, share information, share experiences, discuss issues, share learning, problem solve, build networks, take action, and also sometimes just start friendships. And that the peer support and the combination of peer support and lived experience is something that really is quite unique. As for 3, accessibility, I think it's probably fair to say that DPULOs don't get everything right, and certainly not all the time. That said, we're usually far more accessible and inclusive than other organisations. Typically, we provide accessible premises, we'll produce information in different formats. We try and create inclusive environments, and often will operate out in the community. Linked to that is the fact that we have expertise we know how to recruit and employ disabled people and how to support disabled staff. Similarly, we know how to engage with our service users and with our members. The 4th unique selling point is the holistic approach that again was mentioned or alluded to in one of the pitches. And the point there is, unlike most statutory services, which only look at a particular element of a person's life, like health or social care or work, DPULOs typically offer advice and support across a whole range of issues. They look at the whole person. It might be housing, social care, welfare, employment, training, access to leisure, volunteering, other opportunities. And again, that combination of a holistic approach with peer support is something that is quite unique and quite powerful. Fifth is local knowledge and accountability within the community. DPULOs typically reflect the communities they work within, and they understand those communities. They typically have knowledge and links within those community. This is quite personal for me, because before I became national lead of the Strengthening DPULOs programme, I actually worked as a commissioner of services for children and young people. And one thing that we tried to develop a database, because the disabled children who lived in the borough and their parents and carers were really struggling to find activities that they could access. And so we developed a database of accessible and opportunities and activities in the community, and we put a fair bit of resources into it. And if I'm really honest with you, I can say this: I'm no longer working there. It was an absolute disaster, because every time we went to the local parent and carer forum, they would know of at least 10 more things that were going on that we didn't know about, and probably about 10 things that had either stopped or had changed. So that's an example of why DPULOs, because they are part of the community, can add value that other organisations simply can't there, that being on the ground. The sixth unique selling point is the fact that DPULOs are run and controlled by disabled people. I don't have anything particular to say on that. I think the value of that probably lies in the statement itself. But what I would say is it's how we implement, how we enact the slogan "Nothing about us without us," and I think that's hugely important. And that's why I think all of us in the room see, work, and support the DPULO sector. And the other thing that links to that, and I wish I could pretend I came up with it, but I didn't. I'm stealing it from something that someone said in a different event. It's that as DPULOs, we live by the results of what we do. And there's a very big difference, again, between an organisation that perhaps provides services for disabled people but isn't led and controlled by them. They don't have to live with the consequences of what they do. Whereas as disabled people and our service users, whether we're managing or whether we're on the board or whether we're volunteering, whether we're working for a DPULO, we live with those consequences. And I think that's a really important point. And then lastly, the seventh unique selling point is the fact that DPULOs deliberately seek to be the credible voice of disabled people. I'm not going to say too much about that now, because this afternoon my colleague Brian from the Office for Disability Issues is going to talk about opportunities for DPULOs in each of the 9 English regions to form a network to enable DPULOs to provide peer support to each other through these difficult times, but also to provide a regional platform so DPULOs can develop skills and engage with commissioners and provide a voice for the lived experience of disabled people in that region. I'm going to leave it to Brian to say this afternoon, but I think that also actually brings us right back to where we started with, and I want to end by reflecting on what I asked us to start by reflecting on, and it's simply that: what other business, social enterprise or charity has the breadth and range of lived experience of disabled people that we as the DPULO sector do? And what other organisations that work with disabled people have the mandate to speak on behalf of disabled people that we as DPULOs do, or understand the needs of disabled people in the way that we as DPULOs do? Our asset is our lived experience, and it's the lived experience that we represent. But our strength lies in our numbers, and it's only by working together that we can get through these tough times.
Is that a question, Eva?
Despite the fact that we have, I forgot you, the British Deaf Association and the Action on Deaf of Hearing Loss, yeah? Action on Hearing Loss is not a DPULO, BDA is a DPULO. Yes, Action on Hearing Loss gets all the funding and not the BDA, because the BDA says we are deaf, so what we can do, we can do. How do we change that thing that they think they can know best, and when the funding will go to us? I think that's what we need to know.
Can I answer?
Next session.
Yeah, it's just Andy just said next session, and that's exactly what I'm going to say. Next session. So next session is there are many different ways. Next session is going to be about a type of workshop format that we've developed to support or facilitate opportunities for DPULOs and commissioners to meet and identify exactly that. So that's one way. The second way is about getting out there, and that's part of what my program does. What I do, what my ambassadors do, what the ODI staff do, is to get out there and explain to people what DPULOs are and exactly what we've been coming up with today, what added value they do bring. But I mean, I wasn't being flippant when I said it's really hard to describe or demonstrate that added value, and that's why the task you've done this morning is so incredibly beneficial and so incredibly valuable. But I think we also need to continue to work together on that.
Great, thank you. Right, we'll now move to a 10-minute comfort break. So can everyone be back, please? We will start promptly at 25 to 12. Thank you. Steve, can I just check that you're hearing this? Hang on a second, Steve.
I can't hear you.
No?
I can't hear Steve.
No, that's because
Okay.
there's noise in the room.
Okay.
The microphone is something which turns off. It turns it off, you see, so you can't hear what's happening. Hang on a second. Steve, Jeff, can you try and raise the volume, because I'm struggling to hear Steve.
Oh, really?
I will do that. Go that way? That way or the other way? The other way. Right, okay. So that's maximum volume.
I can increase the volume.
Right, can we try and do that?
Yeah.
Try and increase the volume.
It's bringing it really loud.
Right, okay. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and the issue with the microphones on these things is if one person is speaking, it's a bit like on your loudspeaker phone. If you're speaking, the other person can't speak as well.
Right, it's quite unidirectional.
Yeah, yeah. So what Steve was saying is, you could hear us, because essentially the microphone will be pointing at us.
Yeah.
And that's how we'll have to do it. So the key thing is that the important speakers need to be in Steve's island. Which is fine. I think that's how we do it.
Can we hear Steve? Steve, can you hear me? Can you?
Rachel, I can hear you, and
Okay,
I can
we
hear
can hear
Andy,
you.
but I can't hear anything that's going on with any speakers in the audience.
Right.
So when they were feeding back with the mics, you couldn't hear.
No, I couldn't hear a thing.
Okay.
So
It's really badly distorted.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the key
Okay.
thing here is that because of the way the microphone works, it's only what's immediately in front of the laptop that will work.
Yeah.
Go on.
Could you repeat the question?
We could repeat the question to Steve. Yes. So anything
Yeah.
that's out in the room,
Yeah.
we can repeat,
Yeah.
summarise to Steve. Go on.
Is he only doing on Skype, or can you have another window watching the live stream or turn the volume up as well? I don't understand.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Sorry, the other way is that
Right.
I could use my iPhone,
Right.
join the conference, so that when the person's going down with the microphone to speak, they take the microphone and the telephone, and then they'll be able to hear.
I think we need to establish if Steve is listening to the live stream or just through Skype, because the live stream is
Right.
Steve, did you hear that? Are you listening through the live? Did you listen? Are you
I really
listening?
can hear this is making a splitting headache.
Yeah.
I've got to think this about 3 minutes. I did a Skype call last week, and I could manage about 20 minutes, and then it just gets too much.
Yeah. Steve, can you use the live streaming as well, Steve? We think the volume on that will be much better.
I have got it on my stream.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's about the roving mic, amongst other things. Yeah. Right. What we will do, Steve, we'll make certain that the laptop is pointed at the key speaker,